Hi, I want to welcome you to Fostering Cats for Us at HSHB. Some of you might be new folks watching this, and some of you might be folks who have been fostering for a long time. So, really, the purpose of this is to kind of give some tips and tricks, some things to expect, and how to kind of deal with some of the behaviors that you might see with your foster cat. We typically have a fairly standard set of behaviors in cats that go out to foster. That doesn't mean that the treatment for those behaviors is always the same, but we do tend to see a certain progression of behaviors in cats that go to foster for us. So hopefully this will be helpful for folks that are just starting out, as well as folks that have been doing it for a long time. So let's kind of dig in here. So we want to kind of introduce who we are. I'm Jess Van Koningsveld, cat behavior specialist at HSHB, and unfortunately I cannot figure out how to move this video box, which is covering Dr. Courtney's name. But Dr. Courtney Heck is our director of shelter medicine, and she helps with a huge variety of things that come up with the cats in our care. So behavior concerns, kind of, I'm always the point person for that. The shelter med team is going to be on point for that, as well as Anne. So let's kind of dig into the behavior needs of cats, and the cats specifically going to foster. So what are you going to see? You're going to see cats of all ages. That could include a very fearful kitten all the way up to kind of a senior cat who potentially has some variety of behaviors going on. So it really will be cats of all ages. You'll see fearful cats. We have fosters who kind of are specifically inclined to work with those guys, and that could be you. We'll kind of talk about what that looks like. We'll often send cats to foster for litter box avoidance. There's a lot of kind of terms thrown around as far as cats go when they don't use the litter box. But litter box avoidance is the best kind of way to describe that, and we'll talk about how we would deal with that and kind of what that means. We do send cats out who are rough in their play and their attention seeking. Generally those two things go together, and in those cases we're generally talking about younger cats, adolescents, kittens, those kinds of guys, but we absolutely see cats into their adulthood who have both rough play and rough attention seeking habits. Cats with a low handling threshold, these are our sassy cats. I definitely have fosters who really love to do those guys and really excel at it, so we'll talk about what that looks like. A very small bit on kittens, just friendly, social kittens. What can we do for them to help them out? We often send cats out who are in our Safe Harbor program. Those guys will be going back to their owners, and they just need somewhere safe to be for the time being. Being stuck at the shelter can be very stressful. So if we have a long-term safe harbor, we prefer to get those guys to foster, and they can actually range from perfectly wonderful, easygoing cats to a cat that has any of these behaviors. So it'll be helpful to kind of keep an eye on all behaviors for those guys. As is the case for cruelty cases, typically those guys are pretty fearful, but they also run a wide range of behaviors. So we'll talk about those guys as well. So let's just start out pretty simple. How do you prepare for your foster cat? Anne will send out a foster request email and you're excited to get your cat. So let's talk about the space they're going to be in before you even really bring them home. So we're going to start with a small space. We don't want to give them free roam of the home. And why is that? Because they're likely going to be overwhelmed, right? You might have other animals there, you may have children there, there could be all kinds of reasons. Just like when you're adopting a cat, we always ask folks to keep those guys kind of in an acclimation room. We're going to do the same thing for our foster cats. We really want them to have a home base. We want them to find somewhere that they feel safe, and that's going to be this home base that you create for them. So it can be a bathroom, a bedroom, an office, anything with a door we can close. In my house, before I had kids, I used my spare bedroom. Sometimes I've used bathrooms depending on what kind of, generally I like to put kittens in bathrooms. And now I just have my bedroom. So We kind of set them up in the bedroom. The door can be closed. The dogs can't come in. The other cats can't get in. So they're very safe in there. And we want to have essential supplies in that room. They need to have obviously a litter box and their food and water. Depending on the situation and the size of the room, we may be looking at more than one litter box. That's something to kind of be mindful of. They may need multiple feeding stations in that space. So again, something to be mindful of. And it's something that we will communicate with you when you take your foster cat home, or cats, depending on the situation. They need to have hiding places. And we'll kind of talk about what hiding places can look like and what maybe they shouldn't look like. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We want them to have beds and blankets, lots of comfort items so that, you know, they have a safe, snuggly place to be. Scratching posts are extremely important for kittens and adult cats. Lots of toys. Even if they're not playing with those toys yet, we want them to have toys to choose from. That will help you kind of get to know them when we kind of discover what kind of toys they like. That'll help you get to know them. So. And comfort items from the shelter. As often as possible, we will send you out with things from the cat's cage so that they've got their scent with them. I can't think of a case we wouldn't do that unless the things in the cage were really kind of gross. That could happen. But we really want them to have things in their foster home that, you know, that they recognize by scent. And you're going to obviously want to check for safety, check for loose cords, things kind of rolling around under beds, you know, anything that a cat could become entangled on or chew on. These kinds of things we want to try and put up, tape to walls, tape to dressers, all those kinds of things. I, in my fostering career, have not had many issues with cats becoming injured by things. I've never had that issue with cats becoming injured by things in their room, but you just never know. So you want to take a good look through the room and make sure there's nothing that they can ingest that would be dangerous. You know, loose cords can be a big deal. I have had a cat pull a TV off of a dresser once. That did happen. So just be mindful of those things. So you bring your cat home. What do we do? Your cat's going to be in a carrier. In some cases, we will do our best to make sure the cat's in a carrier. In some cases, we will send them home in other modes of transportation, but it will be kind of a safe carrying apparatus. I don't know what else to say. So they'll be in something safe, and you will take that thing into their acclimation room, and you will just open the carrier or box or whatever up, and you're going to let them come out when they're ready. We're not going to do anything with them just yet. We're going to open that carrier, let them come out when they're ready, leave the carrier open and in the room because it can be a great hiding place for your foster cat. Even if they're, you know, if they're terrified to go in it and they never go back in it, we can work on desensitizing them to the carrier if it's open in their space. So just open it up, let them come out, let them hide, let them do whatever they need to do when they come out. Leave that carrier in a kind of out of the way space. You can put a towel in there, anything to kind of make it comfortable. We'll talk a little bit about that later too, but definitely leave that open and in their space. We're just going to give them time to adjust. We want them to decompress from the stress that they experienced at the shelter, and you know, whatever events led to them coming to the shelter. They've likely lost a caregiver. You know, their world has been turned upside down. So we just need to give them time to decompress, which means we're not going to pet our foster cat unless they initiate that interaction. I always find it best to just let them hide, and I'll, you know, talk to them and leave lots of food and treats for them, and kind of come and go from the room. But I don't do much with them at first. I just kind of let them figure out where their space is, get to know that space, start to own that space, and I will come back and check on them, and when they're ready to initiate, then we do that. But we keep the room really quiet. You know, don't let a lot of people come and go from the room. Obviously, we're keeping other pets out of the room. You know, no loud TVs, no loud radios, although, you know, a TV or radio playing on a low, at low sound is always a good thing. But for the most part, you know, we're not going to go vacuuming in there, stuff like that. So keeping it as quiet as possible. And we really do want to keep people out of there at first. We're definitely going to talk about, you know, when we can start introducing new people, but those first, you know, day 2, day 3, really depends on each cat when they're ready to kind of come out and interact with the world. So at first, we just let them out, let them decompress, let them get to know the space, get to know you, and then we can kind of dig into some work when they're feeling a little bit more confident in their space. So once they have built some comfort and confidence, you can slowly introduce them to other human family members. We're going to wait on other pets for quite a while. In fact, they may never meet your pets unless we request that you do that. And that's something that we will direct you on for sure. There will be cases where a helper cat, a nice social cat-friendly helper cat, can be a benefit. So we'll talk to you about that when that comes along. But and when I say once they've built comfort and confidence, what that means is, and it's going to look different for each cat, because a fearful cat is going to interact with their world in a very different way than, say, a cat who's overeager in their attention seeking. So, and that's where we build really good communication between myself and you guys, so we can kind of decide on how are things progressing, what should I do next. But we are not going to introduce them to new people until we know they're eating and drinking well, until we know that they're moving around the room. Even if we're not in the room, we know that they're moving around because they're using the litter box. They have checked out their resources. They're eating well. They may be moving from one hiding space to another. Sometimes you may hear them play in the room at night. And that's on the fearful side of the spectrum. A lot of these guys, the very attention-seeking, kind of high energy, high frustration guys, are going to come out pretty quickly and be quite confident. But even in that case, we want to make sure that we know the cat a little bit before we start introducing all kinds of people to them. So we'll talk about what those behaviors look like. So a little bit further along. But what's really important is in these first few days that you're just creating a routine. They know that someone's going to give them food and water. They know that someone's going to clean their litter box. They know that someone's going to come in and talk to them, perhaps initiate play, perhaps look for some, good body language to engage in attention seeking and all that kind of stuff. And that routine does not need to be different from what your normal routine is. Obviously we're adding another step to your day, or a series of steps most likely, but it doesn't need to be, you don't need to change how you're living your life. It's really important that the routine that you set up for your foster cat actually fits into your day so that you can be consistent in it. So, when I have fosters, kittens specifically, I, fit in a feeding before I go to work, I fit in a feeding when I come home, and I have very specific socialization times based on what works for my family. And obviously, it's very dependent on what the kitten needs as well. Adult cats can be easier because their resources need to be cared for, and obviously we need to spend socialization time with them, but it may not be so dire. On social kittens, they need a very specific set of interactions and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a different type of foster, but the routine that you set up should work for you and your family. You definitely don't need, to come home for lunch, that kind of thing, unless it's something that you would normally do. So we're going to kind of dig right in to working with fearful cats and kittens, and I'm hoping to have a completely separate set of training for you on this specific issue. So this will be kind of some baseline information for you. So what does that look like? When you're taking a very fearful adult cat to foster, most often that's going to be a situation where that adult cat stays with you until they find a home, an adoptive home. They're in your home and they're being loved, but we're hoping to find an adoptive home. So, and that's not always possible for folks. So we try as best as we can with foster to adopt situations to keep them with one foster as long as we possibly can. And then, your life will happen and they'll need to come back, and then we will look for either another foster to adopt situation or potentially hang on to them until you can take them back. But the goal for a very fearful adult is that we don't bounce them around too much, and they will stay with you until they've found a home, which in some cases can take some time. But the good news is the longer a fearful adult cat is with you, the more resilience they build up, which means that they transition easier to a new home. So that's one of the major benefits about a fearful cat being in a foster home until they're adopted. Kittens will not be a foster to adopt situation. If you're fostering fearful kittens, the goal is to get as much work in with them as possible before they are too big to be cute anymore. And I know that probably sounds kind of mean, But we really, especially when it's the height of kitten season, need to get them back before 3 months hits, because we're going to have a deluge of very small, very social kittens, and very fearful adolescent kittens. Cats are not going to be as interesting to our adopters, unfortunately. And also, we want to get them back because they need to continue socialization. They need to be exposed to a variety of stimuli outside of your home. So a fearful kitten foster situation can be as little as 2 weeks. Sometimes it can be, up to 4 weeks, something like that. It just depends on the kitten. But the end goal for those guys is for them to come back to the shelter so we can continue socialization and find them homes as early as possible. So the age may be different for these guys, but the treatment is always going to be the same, which we'll talk about a little bit. So these guys can meet other cats. It's on a case-by-case basis, and it's something that we will need to communicate about. But a lot of times, if you have a cat in your home who is cat social and is people social, those helper cats can be so beneficial for these guys. So they can learn appropriate interaction skills, feline to human interaction skills from a more social cat. They can learn how to actually be a cat. A lot of times fearful cats are so focused on survival that they don't engage in species-specific behaviors. So having a social cat in your home can be really helpful for these guys. But again, it's something that we'll really talk to you about before it happens. We have a foster right now who is fostering a case cat who has helped socialize kittens and is just magical in most ways. And those kind of situations are it's beautiful because it takes some of the pressure off of you as the foster parent, because, species learn best from their own species, right? So I love it when that happens. And if it happens in your home, then we will guide you through that process. So kittens will be in a crate, and what we call an X-pen, a dog exercise pen, or a kitten tent. I use an extra large, Great Dane size dog crate for kittens, and I give them a hiding den in there, their litter box is in there, food and water is in there, all of their resources are inside that crate. And those guys, I don't let them out until I am quite certain that I'm not going to lose them somewhere in my bedroom. So they'll stay in there, you feed them, you socialize them in there, you do all the work kind of in there. With these guys, time is key. Patience is needed. They can be very, very slow to come around, and it can feel like nothing's happening. So it's really important that you just remember that every day is important to them, is important to their socialization, and you are making a difference for them. So it can be frustrating, but it can be really rewarding because when these guys come around, you've made a really great bond. And again, with the resilience that I keep mentioning, the bond that they build with you just makes it easier for them to build a bond with their adopter. So we're going to allow adults to hide, but we are going to limit the hiding spaces to those you can reach. So what that means, in a lot of spare bedrooms, we have a couch or a pull-out, a couch with a pull-out in it, a futon, stuff like that, closets, all kinds of normal bedroom things. And what we want to do is kind of block off access to some of those places that are really far back. So in my bedroom, there's two sides of my bed. The bed's pushed up against the wall that the cats can get back under there, and it's just it becomes a hopeless situation. So I block those off with boxes. I have Amazon boxes that I have filled with towels. Some of them are, I think for the most part, they all have things in them. It's important that they're not easily moved, because if the cat can easily move them, obviously they're then going to go behind your boxes. So I've got boxes pushed up against two walls to limit the amount of hiding space they have. I've not taken their hiding space away. It's very important that they have that hiding space. But what I want is to be able to at least reach in there with some food. We'll talk a little bit about the importance of food with these guys. But I want to be able to at least, for them to be within an arm's reach. In my bedroom, my cats often go into the closets, which is great because I have a very old house and the closets are very small, so they have a fantastic hiding place, but I can still get to them. So the adults that I bring home, I let them go wherever they want to go, because I have blocked off areas that I don't want them in. So we can do that with baby gates and exercise pens and all kinds of things depending on your setup. So that'll be a moment where we can kind of have a conversation about how to keep them from hiding in very deep spaces. So, and this is an instance where we really want to make sure they can't, just kind of from experience, that they can't get into floor ducts and that kind of thing. I myself had a foster cat disappear into my heating system. And went from my bedroom to my living room and popped out of a floor vent. So that was a learning experience for me. I didn't realize that that was a possibility, that a cat could do that in my home. So those are the kinds of things you want to kind of keep an eye out for. Just kind of take a good look around that room before you let them out and make sure everything is as secure as it can be. Often these guys are going to be what we call talk or read only at first. What that means is I spend a lot of time just kind of sitting I do fearful fostering more than pretty much anything else. I spend a lot of time just kind of sitting with them, talking to them, reading to them. It can seem silly to sit in an apparently empty room reading or talking to yourself, but it does help desensitize them to you being there, to the sound of your voice, to a new sound. It's a new stimuli. All of those things are really important. And it offers them this interaction without having to actually do anything. They can hide. You're there. You're not pushing them to interact. You're not making them do anything. So it does build some confidence in them that this person's here with me and they're not doing anything scary and I'm okay. And they're going to leave and it's going to be okay. I do a lot of talk only with these guys. So kind of what we're talking about. So once the cat has kind of come out from, their carrier or whatever, they're settled, which means that they're eating consistently and using the litter box consistently. We can start offering handling a little more consistently. And it's really a case-by-case situation, but with kittens, with both adults and kittens, we're going to use food and treats, wet food and treats. I do a lot of hand feeding with both adults and kittens, not from my actual hand, because their teeth are there. They don't mean to bite you, but they very well could, so I use a spoon or tongue depressors. I like tongue depressors a little bit better because sometimes when cats bite down on a spoon to get food, it makes a sound that can be scary to them and feel very foreign to them. Not that a wooden tongue depressor is a whole lot different, but it takes the sound element out of it. So I do use tongue depressors a lot to hand feed. And what I do is just, even if they won't eat for me, I will go in and sit with them and offer them food from a tongue depressor. What I'm looking for is that the cat doesn't retreat further away. If that happens, I need to go back to just talking to them. And when we're kind of in that talk only phase, often I will, read a chapter of a book, leave them some treats, and leave the room. So that's kind of the most basic interaction we can have, right? I've had really no interaction with you. I've left you some treats. It was a completely safe interaction, and then I left. And then the next step will be to offer you food from a tongue depressor or spoon or whatever you would like to employ to do that. And they may eat, they may not. If they retreat away from me, then I take a step back. If they seem curious, then I'm going to stay there. I'm going to continue to offer that food to them. I'm going to talk to them and kind of watch their body language to kind of see what's going on. Do they seem like they want to move forward? What are they telling me as I'm visiting with them? And I just build from there, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we can build from there. But that's, we start with the talk only, we move on to using wet food. And it's really about finding the food too that motivates them. So that can be a bit of a tricky situation, but we always have tons of wet food at the shelter that we can send home with you, so that's never a problem. Sometimes I'll try toys, with kittens especially, although kittens rarely won't eat for me. Kittens have especially a feral kitten has a very strong sense of self-preservation, so they will eat. So that's good. But on some occasions I'll, if the cat seems, like they're not retreating from me, they're kind of staying where they are when I go in to visit with them, but they don't want to eat, and I can't find the thing that they want to eat, I will try toys. Sometimes you can make a connection with a cat who has a nice strong prey drive with a wand toy. And although it may seem, they're not really interacting with you, they're playing with the wand toy, but again, it's a very safe interaction for them. They get to choose if they want to play, just like they get to choose if they want to eat. And you are attached to the other end of that wand toy, so, it's this very safe human-cat interaction. Sometimes toys are very scary for fearful cats, though, so you need to be cautious about that. Toys that make a lot of noise can be tricky. Noises can trigger a fear response. So I just really like a good feather wand toy. I often will use those guys when I'm getting started. So really what I'm trying to do is just reward any brave movement at all that I'm getting. Did the cat look at me? Ooh, here's some wet food and some treats for you. Did their body loosen? Were they sitting frozen like a gargoyle when I approached, and perhaps they loosened some part of their body while I was there? I'm going to reward that. In a lot of cases, I'm just rewarding the cat for not running away. So the more we kind of encourage this behavior, encourage them to stay with us with wet food or treats, the more we can build a bond with them. If I've gotten to the point where the cat's not running away, they seem curious of me being there and perhaps what I'm doing, I'll offer my hand. Sometimes they'll inch forward a little bit, sometimes they'll retreat a little bit, sometimes they will actually, smell my hand. And each cat's going to do something different. I'm going to reward any movement towards my hand with more wet food, but I am only going to pet that cat when I reach my hand out to them and they move forward to interact. You offer your hand, the cat's head comes forward, and maybe they don't actually touch your hand, but they come real close. That's when I'm going to offer a pet only on their head, no more. And then I'm going to reward for that. Lots of food treats, whatever food motivator we've discovered, that I'm going to reward that very brave behavior. But we're going to build with food rewards and playtime based on what the cat really wants and is really interested in responds to, until we've gotten to a point where petting them is a possibility, potentially picking them up is a possibility. We're going to build in steps with these guys. So, kittens especially. So I don't talk a lot about desensitizing adult cats to being picked up because it's not something that is of vast importance, to be completely honest with you. When we're talking about fearful cats in a foster home who have potentially been through a series of homes, their socialization has probably been lacking. Picking them up is not something we're looking for. What I am looking for is that they let us pet them. That's specific to adult cats. So we're going to use those food motivators until we can pet them, until they're responsive to that petting. Lots of rewards to kind of aid in that response to petting, but we're not working towards picking them up. We're really working towards building a relationship with them of trust. With kittens, we're going to offer choices to build confidence and trust. And actually, that's true for the adults too. They're always going to be offered choices. We're not pushing them to do anything. We are encouraging them to be brave by offering really great rewards for doing that. But with kittens, part of the socialization process is trying to work towards picking them up. So once we've kind of gone through all those steps where we've done the read to calm, talk only visits, we've offered this food, they're finally letting us pet them, and they're responsive to that petting, they seek that petting out. That's when we can move on to picking them up. Once they're staying close when you feed them, once they're responsive to you petting them, we can try and pick them up. And we'll work on that by wrapping them in a towel or a blanket. It's really best, these guys feel very safe when they're wrapped in a towel or a blanket. You can use a washcloth, you can use a hand towel. They feel safer being wrapped in something that covers their body as opposed to being picked up by hands, which were previously fearful. It caused a fear response, right? So we're going to wrap them in a towel or a blanket, and in most cases with these guys, I'll wrap them in a towel or a blanket and just set them in my lap. My intention is not to pick them up and cuddle them at that point, unless they allow that. It's not going to happen quickly, but it could definitely happen. I just want to kind of set them in my lap, and I'm going to continue feeding them wet food while they're wrapped up as long as they are tolerant of it. If they struggle when you try to pick them up, if they struggle at any point while you have them wrapped in that towel and are holding them, we're going to let them go. let them go, let them run away, let them, kind of do what they need to do. We don't force the interaction. And with kittens, so they're in a crate, right? So it's complicated, all this work. We're doing all this work with food. We're trying to work with them with toys. So when do we let them out of the crate? For me, with kittens, I let them out of the crate when they are responsive to me being there. And that means I come into the room and they're no longer skittering away. They show some interest in me. They know I'm going to feed them, but is there more to it? If I put the bowl of food in there and they don't run away, I will kind of do an assessment to see if they're ready to come out. We don't want to give them access to the room too early. There's a number of reasons for that. Once kittens are running around, they start losing weight just by the nature of energy expansion, expending their energy, and they find really good hiding places. So we need to make sure that we have a really good relationship before they are kind of given access to a larger room, which is why I like bathrooms a lot better for kittens, because it is a smaller room in general, right? So there are less places to hide, and it's, you're in their space a little bit more, so we are forcing an interaction to some degree. So bathrooms can be better for kittens for that reason. But when we're talking about, working towards picking them up, they should be responsive to you. They should stick around while you're feeding them, while you're petting them. So we know that there is some safety in picking them up. So we do the towel wrap, we pick them up, we put them on our lap. Maybe they seem to enjoy that. If that's the case, then certainly pick them up and you can, cuddle them. I like to hold kittens to my chest and pet their head, and hopefully I get some purrs for that. But it's all baby steps, and it is all on their terms. We don't ever want to force these guys because it breaks a bond with you as their caregiver. When we talk about forced loving, that doesn't transfer to the next person. The reason they're allowing you to do it is because they're afraid of you. We have forced them into an interaction, and they have no reason, to think that the next person is going to be safe. So, they're not actually learning to trust. They're broken down by fear, pretty much. So, we need to allow them to make choices, and we need to reward them when those choices bring them closer to creating a relationship with us. So it's important to know that we do have a barn cat adoption program. It's pretty rare for a foster kitten to go through the barn adoption program. Adult cats have definitely we will send fearful cats out to foster, and we will always let you know, listen, this is kind of where we're at with this cat. Here are the possibilities. And if you're not comfortable with that, that is completely fine. We always have tons of fosters, and we want you to feel comfortable. But I always kind of want to let people know, this year we had 2 mom cats come through our Trap Neuter Return program. They had their babies in foster, and those 2 mom cats were both adopted through the barn cat program. So that is something that happens, and if that's something that you are interested in, giving a very, very fearful adult cat a home until they can have their kittens and come back, and then find placement in an alternative way. We are always looking for fosters who are willing to help with that. It is rewarding in its own way because that cat will be sterilized. They'll be given a wonderful home off of the streets, which is kind of great. They have, they'll have people taking care of them, people looking out for them. So I just always kind of want to touch on that. It's extraordinarily rare for a kitten to go through, a foster kitten to go through the barn program. So I certainly don't want to put that thought out there, but we have had adult cats come back from foster and go through the barn program based on kind of where they came from. So, and that's a communication that we will communicate that with you. Listen, this is where this cat came from. This is what we're hoping for, but please don't be discouraged. We do have an alternative outcome for this cat if they just can't acclimate to being inside. So it's very rare, but I always like to mention it. So litter box avoidance. More and more we are able to figure these things out at the shelter. So it's becoming more and more rare to have to send out a cat that's having litter box problems. But in most cases, these guys are not going to be what we consider foster to adopt unless they have other medical or behavioral needs. Really what we're hoping for with a cat that goes to foster for litter box avoidance is we need to figure out what resources they need, what kind of litter box they need, what kind of litter they need, what are their medical needs, all those kinds of things. That's what this is about. We are just trying to figure out what they need so that we can put them in a home. And typically these guys can come back and go up for adoption. If they have other things going on, then they would stay in foster until they're adopted, and sometimes that absolutely happens. But it's mostly an information gathering foster. And every case is handled completely individually. These guys are surrendered for a very wide variety of reasons, with a wide variety of needs. Each one's handled on a case-by-case basis, and the communication will be there to kind of indicate to you what we're looking for and what we need to do. But it's these guys, it's really important. They must be housed in a safe room. Bathrooms really are the best, because we know this cat was surrendered with litter box problems. There is a potential that this cat will have problems in your home. So if they're in a room that has an easily cleaned floor, obviously that's going to be the best situation for you as a foster. So we, and obviously it's always up to the foster what they want to do and how they want to handle things. But bathrooms really are the best place for these guys. So we always kind of start out looking at boxes. We're going to offer multiple boxes. We're going to start with different sizes, different types of boxes. Do they need very high sides? Do they need a low entry? What do they need? So we're going to start out with a couple of boxes, sometimes 3 boxes. We just need to see what kind of litter box they need. But in most cases, we're just going to start with the most appropriate traditional box. We have had cases where we've had to do some kind of crazy things to get cats to use a litter box, but in most cases, they go to foster, and we kind of immediately see that this is a simple solution. We just need, to make sure that we are consistently using the litter box, and then they come back and go up for adoption. It is really important to note that in a huge percentage of cases when cats are surrendered with litter box problems, there is an environmental factor in the home that's very easily identified. We place those guys in homes without sending them to foster, and they're very successful. Dogs torturing them, other cats torturing them, new babies, not enough litter boxes not being cleaned often enough, unsterilized cats in the home. There's like dozens of reasons that they're surrendered, and with really clear environmental cues. So those guys don't go to foster. It's the ones that come in where we see no environmental cue. We can't find a medical cause. Something is, we need to determine what this avoidance is about. So those guys will go to foster. But, we'll start with everything as kind of normal as possible. We're going to start with a normal litter box, normal litter, and kind of go from there. It really is case by case, and we will absolutely communicate with you what we're looking for. But it really is a lot of experimentation. It's not common, but there have been times we've had to use really non-traditional litter boxes and that kind of thing to try and get them to use litter box. So kind of be prepared for that. These guys can be fun though, because often they're just very social cats who really, we just need to figure this thing out, and then they go back to the shelter for adoption. So they can be easy and fun, but it can be frustrating because, we're talking about urine and feces, one or the other, or both outside the litter box potentially. So it can be frustrating, but the goal is always to find a solution, and it is always to, what can we figure out so we can find these guys a home. And in such a huge percentage of cases, we figure it out, and things work out really well. So again, with the barn adoption, it is always an option for the ones that can't be rehabbed. I honestly can't remember the last time that was the case, but it is important to note that sometimes if we really and truly cannot come up with a solution, and something, Dr. Courtney will prescribe behavior med, and that's not working, that would be a cat, when we've exhausted every possible option, and we still can't figure it out. That would be a cat who potentially could find a barn home, but it would be pretty rare. Again, like to be as open and transparent as possible. So, and that would be something that would absolutely be communicated with you, full transparency. So our low handling threshold cats, these are what we like to call the sassy cats. You know, these are the guys who you can pet for like 3 seconds and then they're swatting or, you know, potentially swatting or potentially biting or running away, you know, whatever. And that's why we don't want to force kittens to interact with us, because we can very easily end up with an adult cat with a very low handling threshold. So, you know, everything's kind of circular, tied together. So these guys are very, very often fostered to adopt. If I'm looking for a foster home for a cat with this behavior, it's because they are not doing well at the shelter. And that is because they have very little space to control. There are people petting them all day long. There are, you know, people poking at them through cage bars. There's all kinds of things happening that they can't control. And it's just a very stressful environment. So in a lot of cases, they may have been up for adoption at the shelter, and I need them to find foster because we're having problems with them potentially biting people and that kind of thing. They may need evaluation or assessment prior to going up for adoption. It's not uncommon at all for me to send a cat out who I just can't get enough information on. I can't fully understand their behavior. I can't fully understand what they need to be up for adoption. And these guys in this category with handling issues are, it's common for me to kind of ask for a foster for these guys so that I can find out, can we work with their handling threshold? Will just being out of the shelter increase their interest in, you know, a more normal interaction? So it can be common for them to go out needing more evaluation. So who are these guys? They're cats who don't tolerate much or sometimes any handling at the shelter. And it's really not that uncommon. I mean, we all know that cat that you can pet twice and then they tell you all about yourself. And that's a very common cat behavior, and it's not a problem for us to find homes for these guys, but we need to know the extent of the behavior. So we'll send them to foster. And it's really important that you spend time watching their body language and their interactions with their environment. So we'll talk a little bit about body language, but it's also important to note how they interact with their environment. Are they fearful as they move through their environment? Are they very confident as they move their environment? Because that should inform how you interact with them. A very confident cat who doesn't, you know, want a lot of petting is a cat that you want to be a little more wary of. They really need to be able to seek attention on their own without you, you know, forcing yourself into that interaction. But a more fearful cat who doesn't really want a ton of handling is a cat that potentially we can just work with, you know, using food and desensitization to just being there, who will allow a nice amount of handling at some point. So it's all very dependent on the cat. So we'll make sure that you have the resources you need to kind of understand all of that. But what we're hoping to do is identify their threshold. So if I've got a cat at the shelter who I can pet twice on the head and then they're backing away or, you know, batting at me or whatever they might do, what I want to know in foster is this true to who you are? Or is it possible that you're just so very stressed out at the shelter that you're not allowing any handling? So by identifying threshold, I don't mean please pet this cat a dozen times until you have been bitten by the cat. What we want to know is, can we build on the amount of handling they'll allow? Can we desensitize to handling to a certain degree? You know, all those kinds of things. We're hoping to get kind of a deeper sense of what their handling threshold looks like. So it's really important that you just don't pet them. We're going to let them seek attention on their terms. And what that means is, with a confident cat with kind of a lower handling threshold, they may come running up to you and rub on your legs and rub on your arms and, you know, vocalize at you and all that kind of thing. And that is a perfect interaction. Much like when we're talking about read or talk only visits, this cat gets to interact with you purely on their terms without any pressure to interact on a human's terms. And that often increases the amount of attention that they allow. So we're just not going to pet them. As we get to know their body language a little bit better, we'll start petting around the head and, you know, the face and the cheeks and that kind of thing, but we're going to avoid full body pets pretty much across the board until you know that cat really well. So how do we do all of this? We're going to reward them for allowing interaction, which is successful to some degree. Really, they have no idea what you're rewarding them for, and they're just happy that they got the reward. And by reward, we're talking food motivators most likely, but it could be a play session or whatever motivates them. more than anything, understanding their threshold will reduce their unwanted biting behavior. So, and by that, what I mean is, if we know that we can pet this cat 3 times on the head before they become frustrated and try, bat at you or try to bite, then that's how much attention they get. And that's perfect. That's beautiful, because this cat probably also is a cat that will rub on your legs and be very happy that you're there and eventually settle next to you without you ever petting them. That's as much as we can expect from pretty much any cat. I've definitely had cats who I couldn't pet at all. I have a cat right now who wants maybe 1 or 2 pets on her head, and then she just wants to lay on my lap and meow very loudly at me. So, those guys are very adoptable. We just need to kind of understand how much they'll allow. And the good news is, when they're not being pressured to interact, the biting behavior is reduced. Because we understand them better, right? And then that information can be shared with an adopter, which is exactly what a foster home is for. So what are some signs of agitation or overstimulation in these guys? Usually the tail will switch. It'll swish, it'll twitch, probably the first indicator that a cat is agitated is that tail starts going. And it's very different with a dog, obviously. A tail that's moving quickly can often mean that the dog is very happy, right? So in a cat, if that tail is swishing, kind of doing this, or their tail just starts swishing. It starts twitching. The hair near their tail starts twitching or rippling a little bit. We know that they're becoming agitated. Their ears can also twitch a little bit. Often, like this guy in this picture, who is actually very relaxed and showing no signs of overstimulation, but his ears are nice and forward. And the same will likely be true of this type of cat. Their ears will be forward, but they'll twitch a little bit, so that's not uncommon. The coat will change. You'll see the best way to describe it is small twitches of energy in the coat. It can start at their shoulder blades, kind of twitching all the way back. Piloerection, meaning their tail, often the base of the tail or any part of their hair coat will stand up. Those are very common. Pupils become either wide open dilated or very constricted. This cat in this picture has nice oval pupils. He's a happy guy. He's taken stimuli in, but he's not too concerned about anything. His little front paws are thrown way out. He's very comfortable. So we're going to look for changes in how the tail is moving, changes in what the ears are doing, changes in what the coat is doing, changes in what their pupils are doing. But it's important to know they may not do all of these things at once. The progression for each cat is so different. So just knowing kind of these basic things is really important. Once any of ththese things happen, we want to stop petting them. Let them seek attention in a different way, whatever way they choose, or you can redirect them with food or toys. Give them something else to do. We're just going to stop petting them once we kind of see these behaviors happen. So with rough play and attention seeking, these guys might be a foster to adopt situation. It just depends on each cat. It could be that we just need to get them out of the shelter until we have like a condo or visitation room open for them. Or it could just be someone that should just stay in foster because the stimuli at the shelter is just too much for them, causing agitation. So often it can be in conjunction with another behavior. These guys are often cats who don't tolerate a lot of petting, mostly because they're in a state of high arousal like all the time. So they just don't allow a lot of petting because their brain is hardwired to play or seek attention in a really inappropriate way. And by that, we all kind of know these guys, the cats that nip and paw at you and climb your legs and kind of do all those slightly obnoxious but delightful behaviors. So what we want to do is identify attention-seeking versus play-seeking. So, we'll see this a lot in younger adolescent cats who will come running up to you, and you think that they want attention, but really what they want to do is play, and we mistake that play energy for attention-seeking energy, and that's when they start batting at you or nipping at you or chasing your ankles or any of the things that they might do. So it's important that we remember we're always going to approach these guys with a toy and not our hand. So, he comes running up to you and he's all excited and he might be purring and he might be meowing at you and he's all, happy and excited, and you think, this lovely cat wants me to pet him, but I can assure you that if you do, you might get one pet in before he thinks that whole thing was a game and kind of goes after you. These guys just aren't very smart in their interactions, so we approach them every time with a toy, every time. And wand toys are just the greatest thing for these guys because they can leap, they can, jump and run and work out this energy. And in this way, they learn that I don't seek attention by running up to someone and nipping at them or batting at them. This is what playtime looks like, and then we're going to learn what attention seeking looks like kind of on the other end of the spectrum. So they approach, they run up, we play, give them this amazing playtime. And if they seem worn out and want to come and sit next to you calmly, they can get attention. If they don't seem worn out, then we want to give them a battery-operated toy or a feeding puzzle or something to kind of give them something else to do to learn kind of independent play at the same time. But we're going to create a schedule and routine of playtime. It's really important for these guys that they know that playtime is going to happen, that it's going to satisfy their need to hunt, catch, and kill. Remember, cats are predators, so playtime should look like, a moment of predation. And that means that they need to be able to catch the toy. It's really, people love to kind of whip wand toys around and watch the cat leap and jump, but it's really important that they are successful in their hunt. Although cats in the wild are not overly successful in hunting, that's why they spend the majority of their day hunting. They don't catch as much food as they need, so they often go back out. And often cats in the wild will continue to hunt just because they find satisfaction in it. So it's important that we let them catch the toy. We don't want to use laser pointers on the wall. We want to make sure that they can actually be successful in their hunt. That is so important for these guys. So, but we're going to create this routine of play, high energy play on your schedule. If you are able to do it in the morning before you go to work and at night before you go to bed, that's awesome. But the bedtime routine is going to be really important because, we all have to work and our adopters are going to have to work, and we want them to be able to have a really nice play session with this really rambunctious cat that winds the cat down before bed. So a nice play session right before bed, offer them a meal right after that. And this is how they're going to learn what the routine of the day looks like. Okay, they expend energy, they have a meal, they go to bed. That's what we're hoping for. But it's really important that we redirect any inappropriate play or attention seeking with an appropriate interaction. And with these guys, it's almost always play. If they're, seeking attention inappropriately, if they're being really rough in their play with you, meaning they're trying to grab hands, which is usually the first thing they do, we want to redirect into an appropriate interaction. And that means if I have to grab a wand toy and my little adolescent cat friend is being a little crazy, I'm going to grab a wand toy and show him that this is how we interact. We play with toys, not with legs, not with hands. We play with toys. Some cats really respond well to toy mice being thrown around, to hide and seek games, all kinds of things. So it's really about finding the thing that motivates them and offering them that instead of this inappropriate interaction that they're seeking. And we're going to reward appropriate interactions with food rewards or play. And with this, where it doesn't always work to just reward, when a cat doesn't want to be petted and you reward them for just kind of sitting next to you, it's nice, it builds a bond, it's fantastic. But they're not necessarily learning that I'm being rewarded because I'm not biting someone. All they know is they're sitting there. And it's fine. It doesn't hurt to reward an animal ever for anything. It's never going to hurt unless you're inadvertently rewarding behavior we don't want. But it's important with these guys that they get lots of rewards when they do on their own seek attention or play in the appropriate way. If your little guy comes running up to you and he rubs on your leg instead of batting at your leg, reward him. Pet him on the head once and give him a game. Let's play. Let's play with a wand toy. Let's toss some toys. Give him a great food motivator. Anything that can kind of teach him. I just did this thing that, a week ago I would run up to you and kind of bat at you, and now I'm running up to you and rubbing on your leg and seeking play in an appropriate way. Reward him because he will know, the more consistently that you do that he's done something right. So these guys can be so much fun. And usually they learn pretty fast. They are often adolescent male cats. for whatever reason, our adolescent male cats can be a little troublesome at the shelter sometimes. So these guys can be so much fun. And once they've kind of learned how to play and how to seek attention the right way, they make fantastic cats for people. And a lot of times these guys are foster fails because they are so much fun. So, so with the kitten primer, I'm just going to kind of go kind of basic with this, but it's important to remember that it's not just the fearful kittens that need socialization. All kittens need socialization. So if you're taking a friendly kitten or a litter of friendly kittens, it's really important that they learn all of these things. We want them to learn appropriate play and attention seeking. And how do we do that? We do that by redirecting them into appropriate games, right? Just as we would an older adolescent cat. We'll work on consent for handling with all of our kittens, starting with, things like nail trims and brushing and medical handling. A lot of times we see kittens come through who are really averse to any sort of medical handling. And while there is a really beautiful way, what they call fear-free handling way for medical professionals to handle dogs and cats, not all medical professionals are trained in fear-free handling. So it's important that our kittens learn how to be picked up. It's important that they learn that nail trims are not scary. It's important that they learn that brushing is a nice thing. And we do all of these things by having a really nice reward system. We wrap a kitten up in a towel. We make sure that they don't struggle. We help them feel safe and secure in a towel. While they're in that towel, why don't we pull a little paw out and trim a nail and reward with some wet food right away. And if they let us do one nail, maybe we do 2 nails and reward with some wet food. And maybe they let us do the whole paw and we've just rewarded them with all this greatness. And they learn that, wow, nail trims are kind of cool. I get this really fantastic treat. The same goes for brushing and petting. It's really important that these guys learn that these things are comfortable and safe. So if you've got kittens who are afraid of a brush, let's desensitize them to that brush. Let's offer it to them and, make it seem unimportant to the point where they can rub their face on it all by themselves. And we do that by having that in the environment and offering lots of treats and lots of food rewards and playing with them with it. Playing with them, we leave a brush in the middle of the room and create a game with them leaping and jumping over it. It just becomes this thing that's in the room so that we can then, use it for its intended purpose. And the same is true of medical handling. We want them to be used to being held. That doesn't mean we're scruffing them, because although many veterinarians are going to do that, we're not going to do that. We want them to feel comfortable being wrapped up in a towel and feel safe being in that towel. So it's important for all kittens, not just fearful kittens. But, stimuli is so important. Varied stimuli is so important to kitten socialization, even social kittens. They need sounds and sights and people and other pets potentially. Anything we can expose them to while they're in our home, let's do that. Let's turn TVs on. Let's turn radios on. Let's vacuum outside the room while someone's inside the room, reinforcing, look, it's okay. This great thing's happening even though this very loud noise is happening outside the room. As many things as possible that we can introduce them to, the more adaptable they become. So those things are really important. Carrier training is the same thing. It's so important that with kittens, they learn that the carrier is not this thing that just comes out and sweeps them off to the vet and then brings them back and, these awful things happen. With any foster you have, if you can leave that carrier open in that room, throw some treats in there, have a towel or blanket in there and throw some treats in there, every time you're in the room, even if we don't think they're going anywhere near it, they certainly can smell that those treats are in there and they know that something good's in there. And it just becomes another piece of furniture to them until we can, work them up potentially to the point where we can close the door behind them and they still feel comfortable. But just having that carrier there and making it be a part of their environment and make it something that's not scary, that's so important for these kittens as they grow up. And the same, litter box use is so important. Making sure that they have adequate litter boxes in their environment, making sure that they're using those litter boxes in their environment. Little dog problem. you know, we want to make sure that we're sending kittens out that are using the litter box appropriately. So just making sure they have enough boxes offered, making sure that the litter boxes that are offered are, you know, have the right substrate in them. All those things are really important. Sorry. So safe harbors and cruelty case cats. So these guys have not been surrendered to the shelter, meaning they are not up for adoption. We don't know if they'll be up for adoption. In many cases, they will not be up for adoption. So it could be short-term foster. Sometimes we do harbors for 3 months. Sometimes I feel like that might be the length of a safe harbor, but they could certainly extend past that. And often we have cats in the safe harbor program because the owner is experiencing a hardship of some kind. They can't, keep their cat, you know, at the time. Perhaps it's domestic violence, homelessness, you know, fires, all kinds of things happen that we would harbor a cat for. So we're really just keeping their cat safe until they can come back and get them. And I think 3 months might be the extent of those guys. That could certainly change at any time, though. And with case cats, we just really don't know how long they're going to be in foster. You know, if there is always some potential they could go back to the owner. The case cats are kind of up in the air. But so we do know that it could be short term, you know, a couple of weeks, up to 3 months. We've had case animals recently in foster for as long as a year. So that's something to be kind of prepared for with those guys. And they could really present with any of the behaviors we've talked about. Each one is very individual, and that is something we'll communicate with you when you take them. But what's kind of important and interesting about the safe harbor cruelty cats is that not so much the safe harbor, but with case cats, they may need introductions to the other animals in the home depending on how long you're going to have them. And it's a very case-by-case basis, and we'll absolutely work with you on it. But I know recently I had 2 case cats that I was fostering who desperately wanted to come out of their acclimation room. They were very social, they wanted to be a part of the family, and they desperately wanted to come out. But I have a dog who is not great with cats. So I unfortunately had to refoster my amazing case cats to someone else because they needed to be out in the home. I have one dog who's great with cats and one dog who's not, and they needed to go more quickly than I could do the introductions. So they needed to find another foster. But you know, if you have a case cat, you have other cats in the home who are cat social, you know, they may need to be introduced to your other cats because, you know, we don't want to keep them kind of in an acclimation room for a year. That's no fun. So those are things we'll deal with on a case-by-case basis, as well as what the behavior looks like when you take them. There's lots of support. We'll make sure that you understand, you know, if you're taking a very fearful case cat or harbor cat, that we work with you on that and make sure you're set up for that. So the one very important thing is that we can't share photos or information on these guys on social media, really anywhere, because they're not ours. So sharing information on case animals can actually be detrimental to the case. So it's really important, and you know, harbors are, you know, they have an owner who does love them. We're just kind of keeping them safe. So those guys kind of have to be kept a little quiet. So I just want to say a huge thank you. We cannot do what we do without foster parents. The CAT program really could not exist without foster parents. I mean, when we're talking about things like a case cat being, you know, at the shelter for a year, that just can't happen, right? They need to be in a home. So we cannot run this CAT program without fosters. So I send a huge thank you. And I'm sure that we will be talking. I'm in contact with a large percentage of fosters. Some of the folks that kind of just take these friendly, healthy little kittens, I probably don't know as well as some others, but we will often be in contact. I'm here to support you. So thank you for opening your home to these guys for us. And I just wanted to offer some resources. I don't know if these links will be clickable when you are viewing this, but we'll make sure that you have access to what you need. We'll make sure that, you know, whatever resources you need, that we have those for you. So my email is here, some great websites, some great videos, some folks that I really have learned a lot from, and who I feel have a lot to teach other people as well. So that's what most of the stuff is. I love Jackson Galaxy. Most people do. He has a very positive approach to training and believes that cats can be trained, which is awesome. We need more of that. The Kitten Lady on YouTube has really done some amazing work on working with kittens. There are a couple of things about her socialization process that are a little different than how we would do things. So I'll make sure, you know, we just want to kind of touch base about those small things. She's amazing. I absolutely love her. I just want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with socialization. And it's really just a couple of very small things. So, you know, when I'm touching base with folks, we can kind of talk about what those differences are. And it really comes down to kind of that forced loving that we're trying to kind of get away from. You know, it's a little detrimental to their emotional well-being, so we're just trying to get away from that a little bit. But we kind of talked about that in depth with our kittens. So Pamela Johnson Bennett is a precursor to Jackson Galaxy, and her wealth of knowledge is huge, and I really appreciate everything that she says and has to offer for the cat behavior world. So her stuff is great. Tabitha Kucera is a local to Ohio. She's a certified cat behavior consultant, certified dog behavior consultant. She's a vet tech. She's fear-free certified. Her YouTube videos are the best that I have seen on helping kittens and cats learn fear-free nail trims, consent for handling, all kinds of things. So she doesn't have a ton on her website, Chirrups and Chatter, but she does post videos on Facebook often, and her YouTube videos are just, they are great. So those are some good resources for you. I have tons more that I can always offer, and I am here to support you. So whatever you need, my email is there. Feel free to use it anytime. And I will get back to you as quickly as I can, hopefully with a solution. And if I don't have a solution, I'll have lots of ideas. So, yeah. So thank you so much for opening your homes for these guys. Like I said, we can't do it without you. So thank you. And that's the end. Goodbye.